Hello, everyone. Welcome to the YouTube channel Public Speaking Irina, where we are talking to immigrants and expats in Denmark about their career paths. And today we have a special guest who is a career consultant and the owner of the company CareerDenmark, with many clients, customers, followers in Facebook, and many success stories. And we have a Kate Dahl with us. Hello, Kate.
Hi, Irina. Thank you so much for having me.
And thank you for accepting our offer to talk about career in Denmark. So my first question to you, as usual, I'm asking guests, how did they get to Denmark and what level of education did they have? What about you?
Yeah, so a bit about myself and my career before I moved to Denmark. I was actually a student. I was studying in Germany before I came to Denmark, and I lived in Germany for about 6.5 years. And I was an English teacher, teaching English to children and adults and students. And I also was doing my PhD at the time. And that was essentially what I was doing in Germany before I moved to Denmark. Yeah, that's really the short gist of it. So.
Oh, PhD sounds impressive. And did you use it, or how did it change? How did your career path change after relocation?
Yeah, well, actually, I didn't finish it. I stopped doing my PhD because in Germany it's very different than in Denmark, where in Germany you have to find external funding. And I wasn't able to get external funding for my PhD, and that's why I was supporting myself being an English teacher, a freelance English teacher, as a native English speaker while doing my PhD. And things weren't really working well for me when I was doing this PhD. And then, long story short, I met the love of my life, who was living and working in Aarhus, and I was living in Flensburg. We both met in Denmark when I was in Aarhus through a mutual friend. And then when I was applied for a position in China, and I was offered an English teaching position there with a very lucrative salary and package, and moving to China at the time, I had to make a decision, and I talked to my boyfriend, and he just asked me, well, do you want to move in with me, and do you want to be with me here in Denmark? And the reason why he said that was because he didn't want to lose me, because, if I were to have gone to China, our relationship probably would have been over. And so I had to make that decision, and I was making pros and cons lists and what I was going to do. And then I realized that after making these lists, it really didn't matter, because just a question popped in my head. And I remember writing down the question, like, what would make me happy? And then I realized that, like, these pros and cons lists, it didn't matter, because deep down, I realized that where I could find happiness was with being with my boyfriend, spoiler alert, now husband, and we have 2 beautiful children together. And that's where I had to reinvent myself and change careers completely, because my Master of Arts degrees and my unfinished PhD was useless. And then I went into the sales startup tech industry. And that's really the story of how I transitioned my career from one area to another. So, yeah.
That's very romantic, and it's interesting that Denmark is one of the happiest countries in the world. And you started your Danish journey with the question, how can I be happier?
Yeah, exactly. And that was another thing. One thing I would like to add as well about how I decided to, like, change my career after relocating. Because what I did was I was looking into what the demand was in the market at the time, and I leveraged on the positive list. And for those listening who don't know what the positive list is, it's basically a list of careers and options of what is in demand in the Danish labor market at the time. It's not a visa in any way. It's just a list that the government publishes in Denmark, that this is what we need right now, and we're willing to process your visa faster if you're offered a job. in this area. And so I leveraged on that. And then I saw at the time sales, and I looked at my skills and competences and my transferable skills and said, you know what, I can go into sales. I can actually be very good at this. And that's how I was able to change my career at the time, going from academia to a different industry altogether. So.
And when did it happen? Which year?
Oh, wow. That was back in 2015.
Mm-hmm.
That was a long time. That was a long time ago. But yeah, that was back in 2015. And then I was doing that for about 4.5, 5 years. And like, unfortunately, I had a lot of positions within a short period of time, because you know, the sales, being a woman and working in sales and startups is just a volatile industry in general. And of course, then you need to keep performing and so on. And there was a lot of different scenarios. Like I lost a job due to, you know, a company merger, even though I was promoted up one time in the company. I had temporary contracts. They changed strategy. One time I was let go because I put a strategy in place and it didn't work. So of course, this led me to be let go. And there are a lot of these different reasons why. And then that transitioned me to become what I do today, mainly because I just saw the need at the time when I was about 2018, 2019 approximately. I was basically doing what I was doing now on a volunteer basis, because I was talking to a friend of mine and talking about like my struggles and so on, and what I really wanted to do, but I was a bit afraid to do it. Mm-hmm. And he encouraged me to, and my really good friend who was a coach, actually, he just encouraged me to do what I, you know, being a career consultant, but, you know, said, well, maybe you should start your own business. But I didn't want to start my own business or do anything, because I wanted to be comfortable, and I wanted to try to get permanent residency because I'm a non-EU citizen. And I really just wanted to live the comfortable life, more or less, right, with salary and everything. But then people just kept coming to me. It was just organically. It didn't, like, I didn't force it to happen. People were asking me because they heard through their network that I was so good at getting jobs so quickly. They wanted to get advice through my Danish courses, and it just kind of like happened in this way. And I said, you know what, I'm just going to start some events. And that led to the next part of being a motivational speaker, because I wanted to conquer my fear in motivational speaking. And so I didn't know what topic to choose. So I said, well, what about my story about job searching? That's easy for me to do. Yeah. And my first ever public talk, over 80 people showed up in person in Aarhus.
Wow.
In all places. And I remember when I did my first talk, there were just people crying and said, like, you're inspirational. And like, I don't, like, you just give me some hope. And that, you know, I know that if you had as many trials and tribulations as you did, I can do it this too. And then that just kind of pushed me to say, okay, what if I can do this? And then I started my business officially in 2020. And then COVID happened. Yeah. Like 2 weeks later. And then I had to change everything and said, okay, I've been doing events physically for like 2 years. Now I'm going to do everything online. And actually it was one of the best things I ever did, because I was doing quite well even in the beginning of my company, and I was a little bit shocked by that. And now I continue to shock myself at, you know, like how, I don't know, it humbles me that, you know, when every time I help someone land a position successfully via my trainings, it always just gives me the reassurance that, like, if I can help someone and still, like, you know, help feed my children and doing what I do, but I do what I love as well, and I could help someone and genuinely go like out of my way to help them, like, you know, it really just means a lot to me. So, and that's really my story about how I started my own consulting business. I never meant to do it. It just happened, and I'm really thankful that it did, and that my life just kind of pointed me in that direction. So
it's quite inspirational, Kate. And what about additional education? Many people have a fear of starting their own businesses because they think, oh, I need more education, I need some courses in Denmark. And what about your HR education? Did you need anything?
No, no, not at all. And that's also what I tell a lot of internationals as well, is that, like, for example, I'll tell my own story a little bit, because Denmark, I like to, like, a lot of Danish hiring managers or recruiters, or we'll call it companies, I like to make the joke that, you know, they kind of work like horse blinders. You know, the blind, when you're like with the Amish with the horses, that they're not flexible in the sense that once they put you in the box, it's so hard to get out. And even when you reinvent yourself, it's so difficult. But it's all about how you can communicate your value and communicate the transferable skills into a new field. And to tell you a quick story as well, when I went into sales, I remember in a lot of interviews I had, they asked me, well, don't you have an education in business? Doesn't you have a Master of Arts in European Studies? I was like, no, I don't have an education in business. Yes, I do have a humanities question, but I said, I would like to give you a counter question. And they said, sure. And I said, okay, would you rather have someone who has a business education but doesn't know how to communicate and develop relationships with potential partners and customers? Or would you rather have someone who has no education and actually can communicate with partners? And they said, well, of course, we want someone who can communicate. I said, well, there you go. That's what I have, is I have that skill. And it's really about being like very sharp in how you go about, and this is also what I help with my trainings as well, is how you can like combat and overcome this. And it's the same with what I do now. It's really what I have is life experiences, and I have gotten so many different ways in getting a job that I've taken my teaching experiences and my methodologies of being an English teacher and transferring those skills into doing what I do now. And when it comes to, and so that's what another thing I also want to add is that when I also work with a lot of internationals, they think that education is the solution. Mm-hmm. And I really don't think it's always like this, because it depends on the context. Because let's just give an example. Let's say you have a master's in logistics from your home country, let's say Belarus, and then you come to Denmark, and you know, you have that master's, you have that same education. Let's say it's been approved by Ministry of Education, for example, and you can't get a job. A lot of the times they'll say, well, I'm just going to get a degree in Denmark, the same degree in master logistics, or in something completely different, hoping that it will change, turn around for them, and that they'll be able to get a job. And then they still don't. Mm-hmm. And education is not always the solution. It really isn't. It's about how you communicate your value. And I feel that that's a very, very integral part when it comes to job searching, is that sometimes it is about education, because of course, if you want to be a doctor or a nurse, obviously you need an education, right? But some things, some areas you don't necessarily need to do that. It's all about the transferable skills, in a way. So I think it always just depends on the context and the situation. So, yeah.
As a public speaking trainer, I cannot agree more with you here, Kate, that communication is the key to success. And regarding communication, as I understood now, most of the time you are consulting people online, and you are promoting your company in Facebook, CareerDenmark page and CareerDenmark group. Can you tell us a bit about that development online?
Yeah, a lot of it was just developing content. I think that's really, and I really had to learn about marketing as well. And it's not only Facebook. I mean, I use Facebook as like a secondary, but actually my primary page and social media tool that I use, even that's more powerful than Facebook, in my opinion, is LinkedIn. Mm-hmm. Because that is, at the time I had to learn different strategies about, okay, how do you use Facebook and LinkedIn? And what I did at the time was focus on two specific social media platforms, because there's a lot of different platforms out there. There's Instagram, there's TikTok, there's Twitter. There's a lot of different ones, like Reddit. There's so many different platforms to choose. Also Quora. And I just decided to focus on two for the time being, because I wanted it to grow there. And then when I was ready to learn a different strategy or go on Instagram, then I would do that when I'm ready. And really, it was just about, like, it's for me not about selling. It's about giving, because it's really about the more you give, the more will come back to you tenfold. Because for me, what I do is not about money. It really isn't. It's really because I want to feel fulfilled in what I do, and of course be able to support my children while doing it, and you put bread and butter on the table as well, right? But I do genuinely also want to help people, and that when I make my content, it's all about giving and focusing on the strategy and creating content in the right format within how you use Facebook and LinkedIn, and keeping up to date with the how the algorithms work, and finding out what strategies work best. And with Facebook, yes, I have 14,000 followers. Well, it's actually now 15,000 followers, which is crazy. And I'm now learning, okay, the next level, I need to optimize in doing using my platform on Facebook more. So I'm a little bit behind on it, to be honest. But I really feel where most of my influence is more on LinkedIn, and where I'm more well known, and where I have seen a lot more success than on my Facebook page, to be quite honest with you. So
I can confirm for our viewers that Kate's articles are really, really helpful for me, and I hope for thousands of viewers and readers as well. And we will leave all the links to Kate's social media here in the description. And by the way, Kate, how many customers do you have, and who are they? Are they newcomers, or just tourists in Denmark, or who just planning to relocate, or it is people who is living here already?
it really varies. So as of now, I've been helping a lot of people who are abroad, who are either EU or non-EU citizens, like help them to get a job while being abroad. So it's a mix of this. It's also a mix of those who are spouses, who maybe their spouse has been recruited because their background is in high demand, but then maybe their spouse is like a humanities background, or maybe they do have a great IT background or logistics, whatever it could be, and they think, oh, because my husband or wife was recruited, I can easily get a job here too. And then they try, and then it's been like months until they can get something, and then they end up coming to me. I do help students as well. I have experience with that. And also helping students get interns. It's not often anymore that I work with it, but I did more of that in the beginning of my career as well. And so it's really a mix of those. And actually, I've been also helping a lot of repats recently, which is quite an interesting development within the last year and a half, because repats are, those of you who do not know what repats are, they're Danes who have lived abroad for a long time, and so they have a more international mindset and act a lot more like an international, and then they come to Denmark, and then they feel so ostracized because they don't feel Danish anymore, and they don't feel accepted by the Danish population or society. So I've been working with a lot of repats now recently, which is quite interesting as well, and helping them with landing jobs successfully. But I don't also work with just like people with one-on-one and doing trainings, private consulting trainings. My goal of CareerDenmark has always been to keep my events for free in Denmark. And so I work with, one of my partners is now Akademikernes A-Kasse. So I work with A-Kasses, I work with municipalities. I mean, I worked with like Herning and Esbjerg. I've worked with unions as well, like Dansk Magisterforening, DUF, IDA as well. And I've also worked with organizations like the International Community in Odense and International House North Denmark. So I work with organizations. I do give motivational talks, and I'm a professional motivational speaker, but I've also do workshops, and that's also the goal of the company, is to keep these events for free while working with these organizations. So yeah, and that's what I do and the customers that I work with. So yeah.
What a wonderful vision you have, Kate. That's impressive and inspiring for me, as I'm always trying to work with some companies you mentioned, but we will talk about it later. And what about other Danish people, non-repads? Are you working with them in English or Danish?
So it's mainly English as of now. I'm still learning Danish. It's always a constant, it's always constant for me. I would not say that I'm fluent in Danish now. I am in the process of now that things are really running with CareerDenmark, that I'm making the investments now to take Danish courses and so on. So I also want to encourage those who are business people that you really can work with Danes, even though your Danish is limited and so on. So it is possible. It's just, in the end, it's all about how you communicate your value and what you can bring, and so on. It's about how you go about this process and how do you network and how do you connect. And of course, I always say that the more the better your Danish is, the better to increase your chances in the Danish labor market as a job seeker. But at this point, I am working on becoming more fluent, so that then I have better chances to work with organizations, etc., where maybe their English isn't as good. So it's the next investment, because something I don't talk about, I have talked about in the past, there was some delays, even though I've been in Denmark for like 9+ years. I had some delays, even though with free Danish courses, I had depression and different life tragedies, so I had to put Danish on the back burner. But now that has expired, I have now to make the investment in Danish right now. So it is a work in progress, but it's also just to tell others that it is possible. Like, you definitely can work with organizations and so on in English, but it's, again, all about how you go about your value and communicating and how you reach out to Danes in particular. So it's possible.
Yeah, sure. And good luck on your journey with Danish language. I'm sure you will succeed in this. And what about your consultations? Is it possible to book you privately? How to do
Yes. Yes, you can just go to my website at careerdenmark.dk, and then you can just click there and book. But otherwise, I understand that everyone can afford me. So of course, you can always download my free ebook that is free to anyone. And there is tons of content. Like, you can follow me on Facebook and on LinkedIn, or on my Career Denmark pages for like free content. And you can always go to my blogs as well, where I update when I can for free resources as well. So
that's fantastic, Kate. And my final question to you: 3 tips for newcomers, maybe new HR managers who are relocating here, to start career here, to start business, or just a new career path.
Yeah, so if those who are interested in doing a business or taking a career path, one tip I would give is to analyze the Danish market and see how it is, and really do the research about what is the need in this time being. Can your business be sustainable in the long run, and to also create a strategy. Another advice that I would give is to do research about not only your business strategy, but also the marketing strategy. And even if you're like job seeking, for example, right? I would still argue that you still need to put a strategy in place, and you definitely need to leverage on social media in some way or form. But it's about choosing the right medias and how you go about networking with those media platforms, because you can definitely leverage on that. But like, for example, like if you're going into e-commerce and going into that business, or even if you're like job seeking or whatever it could be, then you can leverage on that. So like if it's then if you're an e-commerce, then like Instagram is like one of the tools that you use, right? And you can definitely network and use that platform, but then also learn how to network in the cultural context and in the Danish cultural context, and about how you go about reaching out to them, and learn how to go about doing that as well. I mean, I do also, I don't necessarily help with business strategy or anything like this. I would always be like to help people in this, saying if you need help with this, I can always recommend someone in my network. But what I focus on in helping businesses is more about how to leverage LinkedIn, because I've become more specialized in that area and in particular. So if anyone wants consultation on this as a business person who needs to know how to communicate to Danes, and how to reach out to Danes, or how to do business on LinkedIn in Denmark, I can definitely help with that as well. I do consultations on that. I normally don't promote it because I like focusing on the job seeking, but I might as well mention it here.
There is a lot of information here, and thank you for this helpful conversation and the inspiring story, Kate. And let me remind you guys that there are a lot of other interviews in our channel, so you can motivate yourself by watching them. It's stories from immigrants from many countries, Russian speaking mostly, but also we have some international guests, as beautiful Kate today. So Kate, thank you. Guys, subscribe to our channel, and don't hesitate to contact Kate in the future for job seeking or consultation.